better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong.
Hey, howdy, Rob.
Howdy, Matt. And howdy, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Dungeon Master of None. Matt, you know that famous saying we all know, we use regularly. What happens in Nentir Vale stays in Nentir Vale, right? You know, it's the kind of place where you go to make some memories and leave them there. You know, just a real self-contained kind of location.
Yeah, it's great for vacations, one-shots, hex scrolls, West Marches campaigns. Yeah, and you can revisit and relive the glory days of 4th edition.
That's right. Today we're talking about Nentir Vale, which is it's
weird.
It's a setting. It's a campaign setting where is unclear. We'll delve into that a bit. From 4th edition, Wizards of the Coast's attempt to revitalize or create sort of a new campaign location, a new setting sort of within the existing setting for more focused 4th edition adventuring. And
Right.
We'll talk about the success or lack thereof of that Nentir Vale strategy in this episode. But yeah, Matt, what do we got here? What are we looking at?
Yeah, it's weird, right? It's not like any of the other official published campaign settings, in that there's no product that you can buy that's like, here's the campaign guide to the world of Nentir Vale, like Eberron or Faerun or Spelljammer or Dying Sun or any of those other Wizards campaign settings. And so we've kind of saved it for last. We've covered all the other D&D campaign settings, but there's just not that much about this one. And if you want to read about Nentir Vale, you've got to pick through a couple modules like the Monsters of Nentir Vale, but the starting point is the 4th edition D&D or Dungeon Master's Guide. So you can pull up that Dungeon Master's Guide, and then it's kind of given as like, hey, here's a example world. We spent the last 200 pages explaining to you how to do math in 4th edition. What if you wanted like a place for your adventures to take place? Well, here's an example town and some locations in just like a region. And that region is the Vale of Nentir. Nentir's
That's
Vale.
right. Yeah, just in the Dungeon Master's Guide and in a few books following it, they just started talking about a place called Nentir Vale as if we all know where that is, and I guess assumed that by continuing to mention it and obliquely flesh it out, that the Nentir Vale would become a brand new location, a beloved setting for adventuring and Dungeons and Dragons campaigns. That failed to come to fruition, I think. I'm wondering, as we were talking, how many of our listeners, who are many of whom are like us, D&D hyper nerds, how many of them even remember Nentir Vale? Because when Matt pitched this episode to me, it like tickled a part of my brain, but like I would not have been able to summon knowledge of Nentir Vale until I started rereading these books.
Yeah, it's weird because it was lost to time, and it's also weird in that you could kind of put, and maybe this was part of the strategy, you could kind of put Nentir Vale as an isolated region in any world, right? You could, as the dungeon master, just be like, hey, here's this little starting region, and then over the next group of mountains is the Sword Coast, or on Dare in Eberron, or something like that. Maybe that's what they were going for. And I think actually, before I get into the like history of this, Rob, is this like, does this have some value? Is this any good? Do you like this at all? Just big picture opinion.
It's sort of, I think that this is kind of interesting. I think that I can see the vision here. Guessing correctly at what the attempt here was. There's, I think, a good impulse, right? This Nentir Vale reminds me of like the Stolen Lands from Kingmaker, right? It's a frontier region in sort of like the fantasy frontier way, like Kubara from Eberron, like an area that's been depopulated or colonized and has a bunch of different threats. There's no big kingdom that rules over it, and I do like that as an adventuring location, and I think that I prefer it sort of conceptually, especially for starting adventures, to like most of the Forgotten Realms. I think that if you want a standard West Marches or Hex Crawl, or just your level 1 adventurers who meet at a tavern and you want to bounce around and do adventures, I really like this type of setting. All of that being said, Nentir Vale is pretty generic, but I respect the effort that went in, right? I like a lot of what I'm seeing here. Does it have value at this point? I don't really know. I don't know that it's better than just using the same concept that's been done better in other books or by other systems, but I don't know. It's not useless. It's not the worst, you know?
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's certainly a big picture. And if that doesn't completely turn you off, I will say that there's value here in, like, if you wanted to look at a good example of what you need to plan out for a campaign at the start over the first couple levels. If you want to do like some serious like world building, it's a good start for that. And I think it's also a good example what they were trying to go with 4th edition, which is this concept of what are the assumptions of the D&D world? Okay, there's gods and planes and magic and monsters and tombs full of artifacts, but the assumption about like civilization and places you can go is a concept that was in the like marketing a lot and is mentioned a couple times in the Dungeon Master's Guide, called points of light. Are you familiar with this, Rob?
Only because you showed it to me. I remembered Nentir Vale, but points of light was completely. I missed that when I was reading fourth edition the first time, but tell the listeners what points of light is about.
Well, here I'll just read from the DMG 4th edition. Civilized parts of the world are points of light in the darkness, and they can be exciting adventure sites as well as safe home bases. And then later on, it says, the world is mysterious. City-states of various races dot the darkness, bastions in the wilderness built amid the ruins of the past. Some of these settlements are, quote, points of light, unquote, where adventurers can expect peaceful interactions with inhabitants, but many are more dangerous. No one race lords over the world, and vast kingdoms are rare. So I think, like, as a concept for running like D&D, where like, hey, there's a bunch of dungeons to loot and there are a couple home bases we can return to, is maybe not like the best assumption for everything in all of D&D, but for a certain type of campaign, particularly like a hex crawl campaign or a West Marches style sandbox where players go out, explore, and then come back, right? This type of world building is kind of useful if that's your jam.
Yeah, sorry, I want to agree with that and add an addendum to my long rambling answer from earlier, which is exactly what you're saying. The thing here that is good, that is valuable, is that the designers of Nentir Vale, the writers of this, the books we're going to talk about, were thinking about how does the setting serve the game? How do
Yeah.
we encourage the type of play, or how do we facilitate the type of play that D&D is about? And Nentir Vale is really good about that. And this is especially in contrast to, and don't get mad, listeners, Forgotten Realms or Greyhawk, right? Which are, beloved settings, but they were not built, I think, with the game in mind, right? They were the fevered creations of some brilliant minds. But like they were not built to facilitate Dungeons and Dragons gaming. And Nentir Vale is, and that might not sound appealing to you, but I think it should be, because these are rich, or sorry, Nentir Vale is a rich setting with lots of hooks, lots of good characters, lots of factions, and it's sufficiently loosely held together that it's very easy for your players to jump in and kind of do whatever they want. And the hooks, the adventures, the various ways to interact with the world just kind of spring to life. I think it's very well designed in that way. My sort of like caveats were that there are lots of games and settings that have done this since 4th edition and before 4th edition. That, all of that being said, though, this does deserve praise, because I think Wizards was doing something actually good and innovative in thinking about how to make their game work with the published material, or help their published material work with the game. A funny thing, every time we talk about 4th edition, Matt,
Yeah.
I really feel like if this had happened at a different time, people would have loved 4th edition. Like, I'm looking at all the things that they did, all the things that they tried to do, and it's all good stuff, and now things that are valued and praised among the community. It just hit wrong at the wrong time, was marketed incorrectly. Gamers are an unruly bunch, but if they had presented this years later, I think it would have been a smash hit.
Yeah, I think you're right. The other sort of crippling thing for the Points of Light campaign setting or Nentir Vale is that, they just never came out. And now we can get into the publication history with a campaign book. It seems likely, at least from my reading of the existing texts, that's what they were pushing towards, right? So in the original DMG for 4th edition, they introduced, hey, here's one part of the world that's mysterious and full of just a couple bastions where you can venture out from and explore the wilderness, and it's full of monsters and weird cults and dungeons for you to loot. And we'll write some of our module series set in that place, and or even occasionally places nearby. Then they came out with a board game that was not very successful, kind of a Risk style conquer the world, move armies around, that synergy linked to D&D, that has a world map of several continents, including Nereth, where Nentir Vale is located, places like the Iron Circle, and you can play as elves or dwarves or hobgoblins or something, conquering the world. And it seemed like, eventually they would release a new campaign setting for 4th edition. But for whatever reason, writers not being interested, corporate being like, oh no, we need another Eberron book, or Dying Sun, Dying Sun, Dark Sun, Athos,
you got it.
book. I got there. Instead, we never got this campaign book, and so now it's kind of forgotten to time. So that's, I think, what happened with Nentir Vale. But you can still find the map of the continent or continents, and the maps of Nentir Vale, and the modules that mention it are still available for sale on the DMG. And of course, I think where we'll start, 40 pages of description at the end of the 4th edition DMG.
And like I just said, I think sort of soft launching a campaign setting that can fit into Forgotten Realms or Greyhawk or anywhere else is a smart idea. I think there was a really good impulse, right? Like, because that differentiates 4th edition from previous editions, but it's still recognizable. It's still compatible. I think it's a pretty good strategy. It just didn't work. Just didn't work.
Yeah.
They didn't get around to it. But I can, like I said, I can see the vision, and I think it's a good one.
So what is Nentir Vale? Like we said, it's this mostly wilderness region. So, imagine the area, I don't know, equivalent to like a U.S. state or something
Right.
like that. One vale. And in the middle of it is the sort of best point of civilization that's available to the players, a trading town of Fallcrest. And all the towns and stuff here are built among ruins of previous civilizations. And this town is surrounded by spooky forests, hills infested by monsters, hills infested by ghosts, mountains on either side. And it's just sort of set up where whatever direction, hook, or hex the players choose to go in, they're going to run into some interesting things.
And it hits all the classics. There's a handful of ancient dragons kicking around, nestled in parts of Nentir Vale. There's bands of orcs that will periodically sweep through the valley. There's ancient civilizations that have left barrows and temples and other areas of interest. And there's bands of gnolls and lizard folk and dwarven compounds, all the hits, right? But well situated and all pretty well integrated into the setting and with each other.
Yeah. And then if you're like, well, where's my 5,000 year history of Age of Demons, the Seventh Age, whatever, you don't get that, right? This campaign setting takes a really light hand to history and economics and migration and the past and culture. What happened before? Well, there used to be a big empire. It was called Nerith. Is it around anymore? No. Who's left? People who are descended from it. Who's in charge? Local lords. How do they get their legitimacy? Doesn't matter. There's a guy who's the baron of the town. There's a guy who's the mayor. Who does he report to? Doesn't matter, right?
Doesn't matter.
His family maybe was once part of this empire. There's a bunch of ruins. It was all destroyed by invasions and monsters and things like that. And I think this is not bad, right? If you want an example of how to do it for yourself, just be like, hey, there was once an empire here. I don't know that much about it, but maybe we'll find out later.
I think this is great. I like to write my own settings this way, and I like to be given settings with this type of setup. I want there to be big spaces for questions to be answered and answers to be sought. I think that's cool. You can sketch out what you think the answers are for, but or to these questions, but I like having a bunch of empty space because you don't need that, and not having it makes it interesting for both you and your players. So I think this is good. I think this is really well set up.
Yeah. Let's get into, should we get into like some details? Where do you want to start? The geography of Nentir Vale, Falcrest, Hammerfall. Like there's a lot of 4th edition naming here, as in everything is a compound world. We've covered that before, but if you want to go to the Thunder Spire, or let's
talk about the sort of the broad strokes. This episode will be enhanced slightly if you look up a map of this, but it's not critical. Yeah. But just so you know, on the west there's the Stone March, which are some mountains. On the east are the Dawnforge Mountains. To the north is the Winter Bowl Forest. And to the south is the Harken Forest and the Witchlight Fens. So this vale is surrounded on 4 sides by not impassable, but difficult natural boundaries, right? And there's a couple of trade routes in and out, and a river that runs to the south. But you can see, it's a map that makes sense. This is not a completely isolated, but a place that probably doesn't get a ton of easy traffic from the rest of the world, wherever that might be. There's a couple of big lakes, Lake Wintermist and Lake Nen, and then some hills. And yeah, like Matt said, there's a couple of cities: Fallcrest, Winterhaven, Hammerfast, Harkenwold, Nenlast. And yeah, maybe let's talk about the cities now that we have the lay of the land.
So the thing that you can say about all the cities is they're really small, right?
Yeah.
I think the biggest one is like 1,000 people or something like that. There are not a lot of powerful NPCs, and they're all just kind of barely hanging on. There's a little bit of trade and interaction and knowledge of each other, but not a lot of knowledge of the rest. And in the DMG, the one city that's given the full like write up treatment is the one at the center of the map, Fallcrest.
Yeah, and Fallcrest, this is it's a classic Dungeons and Dragons city write up. It's there's 20, almost 30 locations, stables and stores and temples, and a handful of adventuring locations, and a smattering of NPCs, and a perfectly serviceable map. Nothing about Fallcrest really like sprung out at me, but it's it's a town. It's a good town.
Here's one thing that sprung out at me is the map doesn't do a good job of illustrating this, but the way it's described is that Fallcrest was once a huge, bustling center of commerce centered around this sort of portage around a waterfall in this main trade river through the middle of the Vale, and that the town is surrounded. There are tiny houses built in the stone ruins of a much larger town. And, obviously this is evoking the kind of Dark Ages medieval city built in an old Roman frontier town, or maybe even like Rome itself. That's really cool. I think that's a cool way to set up a city, right? You can make it seem big and mysterious while also keeping the like NPCs, power level factions and stuff manageable. It also gives you the great excuse for why this town is full of dungeons that also have monsters and treasure and interesting things to explore. So to me, that I think was the highlight of this town here.
Yeah, I was going to mention one of the interesting things is what Matt mentioned. There's a waterfall right in the center of the town, like a big, just a big drop with a cool statue in the center of it. It reminds me of Thrax from the book of the New Sun. It's a cool detail, and the it being a historical site of portage makes sense. Is kind of like a cool bit of history that's not all that common. So this is an interesting an interesting place. I don't know that the book does the best job of explaining what's cool about it, but this is I wouldn't be mad to try to like make an adventure here. There's stuff to work with.
Yeah, a couple other highlights is, there's clearly a haunted, abandoned castle on a tower that after being cleared out is the perfect like base for your players. There's a couple of like really good plot hooks for both dungeons in old catacombs within the town and sort of schemes of what's going on in a larger sense. There's some evil tieflings that are like looking to control commerce here. There's a rival noble who wants to supplant the good mayor, Lord Mayor Baron, and his wife. There's exactly one. Well, I guess there's two wizards. There's exactly one wizard who like advertises himself as a wizard, and he's old and kind of useless, but he can point the players to adventure, so that your wizard character can eventually supplant him. And yeah, there's I think a couple of pretty generic, and then a handful of really well written NPCs.
I want to talk about that wizard for a second. This is not.
Yeah, let's talk about that wizard.
But we gotta. I
the
just
Septarch of
I have some
Fallcrest.
questions, right? Yeah. So the guy is named Nimozaran the Green, and he styles himself the High Septarch of Fallcrest. And according to this detail about the Septarch's Tower, in the days before the Bloodspear War, this was the seat of Fallcrest's Mages Guild, an order of a dozen or so wizards and arcane scholars. They all died. Now it's just Nimozaran and his apprentice named Tobalar Quickfoot. Now, Matt, maybe you've anticipated
Tobalar.
What my issue is here.
Yeah.
A dozen is more than 7, and 2 is less than 7. So why is he the Septarch? Why is he? What is the Septarchy that he is a member of? If there were 6 other mages, that would make sense. But it feels like he just picked a cool sounding word, and he's like, I'm the Septarch.
Well,
I have an issue.
See, this is you got to get into the points of light mindset here. You come up with a cool sounding word, and he's the Septarch. And if you're my player and you're dealing with Nimozaran, and you're like, why are you the Septarch? He'll give a rambling answer about how there are 6 other wizard towers, just like this one, scattered throughout Nentir Vale and beyond. And maybe some of them have teleportation circles, and some of them fell to evil, and you can go explore them. He was a member of one of 7 high mages of this region, and you can go find the other mage towers somewhere else.
Okay, that's a great answer, but that is something you
of
made up to fill in for the failure of the writers of this adventure to account for. I've actually kind of mean this with love, but I want to draw attention to some of the compound words that are included in just this short representation of Fallcrest. You've got, of course, Tobalar Quickfoot. You have the Moonwash Falls. You have Teldorthan Ironhues. You've got of course, Fallcrest itself. Kamara Brown Bottle is the brew mat. I just, it's fine. There's a perfectly fine naming convention. It's just funny how 4th edition was like, everything is a compound word. Let's just mash them together.
Winter Mist, Winter Bowl, Carngorm, Stone March, Winter Haven. Yeah, everything is, with a few exception, is a compound word. I am completely with you. I think it becomes corny if you have too many of them. I guess the defense of the compound words is that, unlike coming up with a cool fantasy-esque word, right? That's not a compound word, like the Harkin Forest. Okay, Harkin, that's a cool fantasy-sounding word. Is that compound words are easy to remember because they're just modern usage words.
Yeah.
That you can, too many of them. It really,
it's just
the Ogre Fist Hills. Oh, the hills that are fists of ogres. That's so mysterious and dangerous.
The 5 League House.
What about 5 leagues from Fallcrest, I think.
What about Hammerfast or the Shadowfell? It's fine. Genuinely, there are worse naming conventions by far. It's just I agree with Matt. I think maybe just a spice with these. Maybe use them delicately.
Yeah. No, I like the rule, and we're getting off topic, but it's a good off topic, that you should use the compound words for things that are named in like recent memory when you're world building. And then you can use your crazy, weird, made-up fantasy language that you've been working on for 10 years for the older things.
That is good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so gather your blood spears and tell me anything else. Sorry, I had to put one last. Okay. Anything else you want to talk about Fallcrest?
No, we got a lot more to cover here in the Vale, so let's move on from Fallcrest.
Yeah. Again, most of the plot points will point you out from Fallcrest, And the default assumption here is that you're pointed to the west, to the Cloakwood and Cobalt Hall, which is definitely the least imaginative name possible. It's a hall.
Yeah.
It's a dungeon full of kobolds. I don't think this adventure is very good. Maybe this is just my personal memory of playing 4th edition for the first time and being unimpressed on first playthrough running through the adventure as written. But there are some kobolds that have been, guess what, causing trouble, and you've got to go kill them. And there's a dragon at the very bottom of their dungeon that you can take care of.
I think we might have played in the same adventure, Matt, and I also remember being pretty unimpressed by it, but that's okay. It's fine. It's a level 1 adventure. It's supposed to teach you 4th edition, which had significantly different mechanics than 3.5, and it was meant to be pretty straightforward. But yeah, this is pretty boring.
Yeah. Let's see. I think there are some cool locations here. I think the coolest one that you'll have to go to, let's see, Monsters of Nentir Vale to find out more information about, or maybe the
threats to the Nentir Vale.
Threats to the Nentir Vale is the Thunder Spire, which hidden below it, the seemingly just, kind of random mountain here, is in fact a maze full of evil minotaurs and people who worship the god of torturers. And there's like a giant mega dungeon in here full of these just weird, sick freaks. And I kind of like them. They got a cool aesthetic. A bunch of dudes wearing like minotaur horns who are also wizards.
Yeah,
cool.
the mages of Sarun. I was like, what's going on here? This is wild.
Yeah.
You guys are weird. They're not, I mean, they're evil, but not like, not like your standard evil. They're just like, yeah, we love our horrible labyrinth full of minotaurs and
we love
horns.
Mazes.
Yeah, just pretty cool. I liked the mages of Sarun. Yeah.
I put some guys who like dungeons in your dungeons game. Awesome.
Yeah, do we want to jump to threats to Nentir Vale to talk about some of these these places? Because
there's threats to Nentir Vale, and then there's the Dungeon Master's Kit are your primary sources besides adventures that happen to take place here.
So threats to Nentir Vale, and I really appreciate the sort of the framing and straightforwardness of this, because it's like, you're going to go around Nentir Vale and you're going to fight monsters. So we are going to put those monsters front and center and sort of like wrap the setting information around these monsters. And for all my like griping about in the past about how 4th edition's monsters were set up and presented, these are pretty cool because what they've done here is they've centered monster factions and monster groups, as well as like singular monster leaders, like the dragon Calastrix or the Gravelstoke family. And I really like this. There's some classic here's a Bloodfire ooze, but most of threats to Nentir Vale is like here's these monster groups and like who's in this group, what's their sort of like relationship to the Vale and the other groups, and how you might use them in adventure. I think this is really cool.
If we compare this to 5th edition's sort of framing of their monster books, which is a guy or sometimes a gal introduces you to some monsters, I much prefer this. I prefer
me too.
the extra information you get about the monsters instead of being like, well, here's some ecology of just how this monster works. No, here's some ecology of how these creatures or monsters work and some information about a faction they're in. And the cool thing about that is if you take the Frost Witches, you have a faction that, while it is specific to Nentir Vale, again, everything we're talking about here is so generic, it's pretty easy to port it to something new.
Right. I think this is much more useful than, even the better versions of the monster books that we got in 5th edition. I think this is, as a GM, just a lot easier to pick up and make sense of, and to introduce into a campaign or as an enemy group. This was written with an eye to being usable by GMs, and I appreciate that. It's like, here's the information that you need to use this monster, especially in an Nentir Vale campaign, but like in any campaign. And the 5th edition, even when you get the big detailed explanations of monsters, which I appreciate, or their groups, it's still just like a lore dump. It's not aimed at how do you use this, Not that I hate.
Here's another one of my favorite ones, the Gravel Stoke family. You get a bunch of stat blocks, which I don't care about, for assassins.
Who cares?
But they're descendants of a noble house. They're all nobility. And what do they do now that the empire has fallen and they have no more power? They, the reigning patriarch, Xander, and he has an itch to restore his family to greatness by doing what it does best, murdering people. And so there's this family of assassins that are all related, possibly incestuous. There's a weird thing about that, but yeah, if you need a group of assassins to hire, I think assassins who are all nobility is a great twist.
It's great. There's Xander, his hot new wife, and his 3 fail sons and daughters, and they're all assassins, and I think it's great. They all have stat blocks, they all have relationships, they all have details. This is such this murder family is something I can see very easily using in any campaign.
Yeah. What are your other favorite factions here in this?
This is a great question. I really liked Dythan's Legion. This is kind of like a cool idea. This is a group of dragonborn legionnaires that are in the Vale looking for ancient stuff. And I think just the idea of a lost legion is just a cool idea. And I think they're interesting because they don't have to be an antagonist, but I think they would be a really cool faction to introduce as an obstacle or a potential antagonist that's in the way of the players. They've got there's a really cool illustration of a siege tower that's an animated construct that breathes fire. These guys are cool. I thought this was real classic 4E type monster situation. I love this version of the Dragonborn. I over the years I have come to like it.
Yeah. Big picture stuff. I think this is really good world building advice. So let's say you've built a region and you've put some factions in it, right? That are exist at a static location. And then, this is kind of showing you a good next step is to add some traveling mobile factions that you can deploy when it's appropriate, or on a random table of wandering monsters, or you can use to respond to the actions of the players. The players destroy, the evil human and minotaur cultist of a region that's full of magic artifacts. So the Dragonborn Lost Legion of artifact hunters shows up.
Yeah.
I also like this because my default inclination, I've done this too many times to my players, when I want a rival group that also wants the stuff, MacGuffins, places that the players want, I go for they're another party of adventurers. And having they're a military command is such a better contrast, because usually your player characters are not a military command.
Yeah. I think this is just a really interesting type of obstacle that, this could just be a series of combat encounters, but if your players are lawfully inclined or kind of like this thing, they're a group that they could treat with or negotiate with. I think this is a very rich adventuring opportunity. I liked this one a lot.
And you could tell someone had so much fun making up the fake draconic Roman Legion ranks. Legatus, Thanar, Vargas, Hingot, Farang. These are great. If you need some draconic Legion names. Sterling, Brian, Matt, or Steve, one of the authors of this book, had a lot of fun with this.
Yeah. How about you, Matt? What's a favorite of yours from this?
Let's see. I think the three-headed dragon is super cool.
Cool.
I think if you want something straightforward, it is Callistrix, the white dragon, is just a good mid-level draconic threat to the player characters. Of course, I also love the mercenary company, the gray company. They're not the black company, they're the gray company. Yeah, someone.
I also liked the Gray Company. Yeah. For a lot of the same reasons I liked the Draconic Legion. I'm just like, this is a great thing to introduce.
Yeah. What about like on the periphery? Are there any interesting locations? I think the key. So there's an adventure set in Nentir Vale, H1 Keep on the Shadowfell, and it's really like hey there, assuming you're a 14-year-old boy, as basically all D&D books did until maybe 10 years ago, wouldn't you love to run your first D&D campaign? So it's one of those modules where it lays things out, but I think it's a good like starter dungeon where you have a threat that the players can handle, but there's something weird about it. It's a portal to a dark realm is a pretty well-worn trope, but I think it's done fairly well here. And you get a kind of second, smaller town, Winter Mist, Winterfell. No, not
Winter Haven.
Winter Haven, that the players can base themselves out of as they explore the like 6 levels of the Keep on the Shadowfell.
Yeah, there are a bunch of like cool places here. I do like the Grey Downs, one of these sort of generic hill areas, which is a site of the old Nerath Empire. It's where the Great Company is hanging out. It's covered in fog. There's a bunch of barrows there. This is I think one of the cooler, more interesting places. Lots of standard dungeon delving opportunities here, but in a cool way, I think.
Is there anything else we want to say about the geography, history of Nentir Vale, ecology, factions, or monsters?
I mean, there is a bunch of interesting stuff here. I don't think anything that we need to cover necessarily. None of it is groundbreaking. I think we mentioned all of the cool things. There's an infestation of like alien beasts called mooncalves, which I like a lot.
I love the mooncalf. It's a flying kraken. Squid thing. It's such a good monster design.
It's got bat wings and tentacles. And they're sort of proliferating, and there's a few places where they're nesting, and it's cool. I like them.
The mooncalf, not only because it has kind of a non-threatening name, but in fact it's a horrible flying squid from the far realm, and its design is so cool. I was blown away that like this monster did not sometimes they come up with a new monster like the carrion crawler or something like that, or the cadaver collector, and then it gets reprinted in every monster manual for the rest of the time. The mooncalf should be one of those.
Yeah, I mooncalf should have made it to the next edition. I agree.
I think if you I have some bigger picture thoughts about points of light setting and Nentir Vale, but if you are interested in reading this, I had to put together like what is the I'm like how do I find out about Nentir Vale? So I did like some research on what you need to buy. You need the Dungeon Master's Guide for 4th edition, and that gets you the brief big picture overview and details about the town of Foulcrest. If you want to spend more money or find the book some other way, I think your second purchase should be the Monster Vault: Threats to Nentir Vale, and that'll run you $10. So it's not incredibly expensive. And then last but not least, if you want even more stuff besides the adventures, you can get the Dungeons and Dragons Essentials Dungeon Masters book by James Wyatt. So this was part of the essential stuff that tried to like revamp and relaunch fourth edition. And it has a little bit more Nentir Vale stuff, but mostly it's just dungeon master advice that maybe we should one day go over ourselves, because it's kind of an interesting book. And then there are two main adventures, Keep on the Shadowfell, and one we haven't talked about yet, Reavers of Harkenwald, part 1 of the Iron Circle.
Yeah, and from Matt's list, you can tell that it seems like they were doing a focused push here, right? This is a level of cohesion that we don't often see from Wizards of the Coast, right? They don't usually put out this much material focused on a single region. And I don't know what happened up at corporate that made them change their tack, because it didn't come together. But I agree with your suggestion at the beginning, Matt. Probably there was a campaign setting book coming, and I'm curious what that was going to be and what was going to be in it. But shall we talk briefly about Reavers of Harkenwald before to close out our retrospect, our archaeological dig into what remains of Nentir Vale?
Sure. Give us the brief synopsis of what this adventure is about, which I think is sort of pitched as like, hey, here's the conclusion of you've been campaigning around a little while in Nentir Vale.
I mean, I don't want to give this short shrift, but the synopsis is there's a bunch of mercenaries, and you got to stop them from doing mercenary things and save the Baron. And there's more to it than that, but it's basically like the players get to be big damn heroes defending a village or the Nentir Vale from the Iron Circle. It's pretty straightforward, but it's a good introduction, I think, to the setting.
Yeah, I think I like the basic idea of this adventure by Richard Baker, which is mercenaries invade, you have to drive them away. Most of the encounters and stuff is your traditional like dungeon crawling, as opposed to sort of more dynamic, hey, deal with these mercenaries things. So it's in the tactics, not the strategy, that this adventure falls short for me.
Yeah.
Again, guy reviewing Dungeons and Dragons adventure, mad there's too many dungeons.
I mean, listen, we've done a lot now, Matt, and I genuinely think that it is a fair criticism at this point that if there are too many dungeons in an adventure, because we've looked at a lot of dungeons, and the place to be innovative is literally everywhere that's not a dungeon. So, I really got to be impressed by the dungeons I'm looking at if there's going to be a bunch of dungeons in a book.
So I have a couple of big picture points about Nentir Vale.
Okay.
And I think we can
let's do it.
Get a low one out of the way, which is just like, hey, this is lowest common denominator, generic fantasy slop, and that's either fine or you might hate that.
I know exactly what you're saying, but I do want to push back on slop, because I think this was crafted with care. I think that this was made with love. It isn't. This is not my cup of tea, and I think that Matt is correct that this is like, hey, you're 14. Wouldn't it be cool to adventure in a place called Nentir Vale? Like, there's not a lot of like originality or even sort of like creativity within the framework that you're given, which does exist. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Kingmaker is a great example here. There's not anything like groundbreaking about Kingmaker in terms of the themes or the setting, but it is a groundbreaking adventure in terms of how you play and what you do. So there's not a lot going on in Nentir Vale, but I can tell that a lot of effort and care went into this, that they were really thinking about making something cool. And just because it wasn't my thing, again, we roasted some recent books for not doing this. And every time we read a book where I can tell that it was slop, that it was, assembly line or just put together haphazardly, I want to make sure that I make that clear. But this is done well. It's just it's not a thing that I think necessarily warrants the level of effort that went into it, but it is at least like effortful,
Yes. People, you are right to push back. People cared about the Harkin forest.
They did.
When they put that in the DMG,
witches.
they're like, there's actually a group of druids and elves and then goblins that live here, and they each have their own factions and relations. They thought it out, right?
Yes.
Even if the naming and theme are generic, right?
Right.
Which was probably their instructions. Make generic fantasy for our generic fantasy role-playing game.
Yeah.
Here's my second.
That's point one. Yeah.
Second big picture point. Since, let's see, 2007, when Ben Robbins talked about running a sandbox drop-in open table hex crawl that he called the West Marches. And since then, many OSR publications have expanded on it. Like Matt Colville did a video on it. We've done an episode on running an open table game or a hex crawl or a West Marches style game. It's grown in popularity. I think lots of people are running these types of campaigns. I think Nentir Vale is a great example of someone who has already mapped out this sort of wilderness for you to explore. And if you start at Fallcrest and just start hex crawling and exploring away, I think with this campaign setting, you're going to have a good time if you put in the rest of the effort of adventure building.
The books we described, maybe we make them sound like they're incomplete, but genuinely, you could do exactly as Matt said. You could lay a hex map on top of the map and start in Fallcrest and just tell your players where to go. And there is information and detail, I think, for every hex to have like something cool and interesting happen. I think it is built very well for a loosely structured West Marches hex crawl type campaign. I think it's a great setting for just bouncing around and adventuring.
Yeah. You'll still have to do the work of filling out the hex with something interesting besides there are bandits in this in this abandoned keep, and making that cool and connecting things and finding treasure and extra monsters and stuff. But yeah, I think it's a good starting point. And I think lots of people want to play this game. If you want that sort of points of light style game where danger is really close by, you leave the hex you start in and there's bad stuff, and you've got to find a way to negotiate or negotiate with it with violence before you can return home with your treasure.
Right.
I also think it's a great example of world building where after a couple months of campaign play, your PCs are basically the most powerful people. Right. We talked about, there's crazy powerful dragons and cultists, but among the like civilization places, there's a mayor who's got a cool wife who's a wizard. And then there's like one wizard, and there's a couple of hidden nobles that are actually powerful NPCs. But for the most part, your players will be in charge because of the way power structures are essentially not set up. Right.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
This is the same. One of the things that makes Kingmaker cool, potentially interesting, is your players have the chance to sort of like shape this region positively or negatively, depending on sort of like their temperament, right? They could set themselves up as their own little like, barons and baronesses, or they could decide who they want to be, the baron or the leader of Nentir Vale, or they could wipe it out of all the threats out and lead it to an age of golden prosperity or something like that. Because unlike Greyhawk, unlike Forgotten Realms, the Sword Coast, like there's not a bunch of like high level adventurers kicking around to be a counterweight. And this is good and bad, right? This kind of depends on what type of game you want to play, but it is cool. It is a neat opportunity that I think is potentially very fun for a like 1 to 20 campaign like this. You could actually probably would stop way before that, but like, a full adventuring career could take place in Nentir Vale, and I think that's neat.
I think my last big picture point is that if you wanted to plan a wilderness crawl or a hex crawl, and you want to like, am I doing a good job with planning this out? Use this as inspiration, a thing to steal, or like a way to just kind of check yourself. Hey, okay, this is a good guide. I should put a couple of points of civilization, a couple places where there's obvious dungeons, like, hey, here's an abandoned abbey. Here's an abandoned temple full of evil bandits. These are obvious locations for dungeons. Then I can put some non-obvious ones, some places for the players they know they want to go and don't. Like, this is the perfect way to kind of bounce off. Here's someone else has done it. A kind of wilderness crawl region.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I'm going to add one sort of big picture, and that's, this is just kind of for me. But when I was reading this, I really enjoyed, for all of my gripes and disinterest, I really enjoyed, I think I alluded to this earlier, but the way that it's written and the way that it's designed to facilitate a certain type of play. I like that the campaign setting, that Nentir Vale, the Points of Light, is like, here's these places in the wilderness surrounded by danger, and you're dungeon delving and fighting packs of gnolls, and you're making the wilderness, safe for civilization. And that's not going to work for every single campaign, and there's a very specific type of gameplay. But I like it. I like that there's a focus and intent here. I'm realizing that I kind of like miss that in campaign settings, rather than just getting I love a big book of here's some stuff, but this is a cool thing. This is one of the things that's cool about Eberron, is that the whole campaign setting is designed to facilitate a specific type of play. And it's a cool, it's, I think what I like about something like Ultraviolet Grasslands, like a lot of the stuff that we've talked about is designed with an intent to make it easy to run games and play games of a certain type. And you have to have an intent. You have to have an idea of like what you think the game should be. And that's riskier than just sort of being like, here's a bunch of stuff, do with it what you will. So reading this, even though I didn't love it, I was like, okay, I respect that they've got like an idea and a point of view. And this is a thing that I'm missing from Wizards, and I have been missing from Wizards for probably like 5 years now, maybe longer, is they're just like unwilling to like tell you what they want the game to be. And it does kind of suck that 4th edition tanked so badly, because I think Wizards took the wrong lesson from it, which is that like they should never like take the risk of saying what they want the game to be, because now they don't. I'm a lot less interested in most of what they put out. And this was a reminder that they used to have a lot more direction, a lot more ideas, a lot more purpose behind what they were putting out.
Yeah. I see that. I think, and I agree. I prefer it when games tell you what they want the game to be. And then you can decide to go there or not. The obvious answer is scoreboard. For 5th edition's DMG and setting books are way better selling and way more popular and even critically acclaimed than
I might be wrong about this. Like like I said, this is a personal opinion. Other people may not agree with me. 100% you are correct. I liked this a lot more at this point than what we've been getting from 5th edition. So that's all.
No, it's funny. I never thought I would reach the point where I was like, man, I wish there was a 4th edition, book that was never released, because 4th edition published a zillion hardcover and soft cover books.
A lot of books.
After reading this, maybe it's Stockholm Syndrome, but maybe not. I was just kind of like, yeah, I kind of wish I had that Nentir Vale and the World of Nerath campaign setting book to read. And so, well, there you have it. As you can tell, listeners, we're getting into we're almost done / into the things that aren't even really official D&D campaign settings at this point in this podcast's career, because we've covered all the other
covered
ones.
Pretty much all of them at this point, but
we're into obscure stuff. Birthright. Maybe we could do the Kingdoms of Kalamar. I don't know. There's a bunch of weird Mystara.
Yeah, Mystara's might be like the last like big one that we haven't really talked about. So yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe I might have swung a little bit too hard in the other direction there at the end, but I did. This is just sort of like a general aesthetic feeling that, even though objectively in a lot of ways 5th edition stuff is better, I wish that Wizards was still willing to take some big swings is what this made me realize. Not that I wish that I was playing Nentir Vale instead, but like that even though this was kind of generic, they were trying to do something here,
Yeah. For all of our criticisms about like the way it's not set up to be a hex crawl, but it would be kind of cool as one, the Icewind Dale campaign saying like, it'll give you some of the same kind of feel. Like here's a weird isolated region that you can just kind of ping around with. But yeah, I like this one. If you want, I would say read it if you want the complete picture of Dungeons and Dragons campaign setting publication history, or you are very interested in wilderness crawling and points of light style campaigns.
I mean, this is mostly interesting, I think, from like a historical perspective, perhaps, but there are genuinely some interesting factions and monsters in here, and you could do worse for finding something to sort of like dig through for ideas for a hex crawl or a wilderness adventure. It's really, again, pretty generic, but some good stuff, some very workable stuff in here.
Yeah. Check out Nentir Vale. If any of our listeners have a copy of that board game, and it has more information about the wider world, definitely send us a message at dmofnone@gmail.com, or you can, hop on our Discord, link in the show notes.
If you'd like to support the show, head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/dungeonmasterofnone. As always, thanks for listening, everybody, and keep rolling them dice.
You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it'll change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. Pac Div. You never know if you don't roll those dice.